Okay, so I'd like to thank you all for having me here to the OpenDaylight Summit. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about Karaf and our roadmap and what our community is seeing as we go forward. I've been incredibly happy that OpenDaylight has moved their platform on top of Karaf for the last 2 years. It's been an amazing journey between our two communities. In this report, I'm going to talk about our roadmaps, our various sub-projects, and just talk about what's going on in those and how OpenDaylight can come to Apache Karaf and help us make these projects better. So a little bit about me really quick. I'm going to go through these slides real quickly. I'm a committer at Apache Karaf, Felix, and Service Mix. I'm one of the Karaf PMCs. I just got engaged. Awesome news for myself. I'm coming from Newfoundland, so I'm a little bit in a different time zone here, so a little bit jet lagged. So please excuse the strain in my voice. Since every single presentation always has a slide with cats, these are my managers. They make sure that I'm coding every day. Last year, when I was talking to you guys, I said that I was going to put a little bit of effort into writing an update to the Learning Apache Karaf book. I started working toward that goal, and what ended up happening was that we wrote OpenDaylight Cookbook. This book is going to come out sometime around December of this year. I wrote with several other OpenDaylight committers and contributors. We hope that you guys are able to use this book to be able to write various recipes for your networks, being able to get your controller up and running and doing projects that you want to do quickly and easily. It's currently available on the early access from PAC, and you can get it through Amazon as well. So if you want to download it as it exists right now, I think you have the first 9 chapters that you can read. And as you're reading it, you can send us back feedback, and we'll update it into the finalized book. All the code's on GitHub, so you can get our configs and any of the code that we write and try it out. It's really been a lot of fun. So let's get to the crux of my talk. I want to talk about how our communities are working together. You're the OpenDaylight community, you're working on a software-defined networking controller. I come from Apache Karaf. We're all about modular development and running microservices. Together, our communities have created some amazing projects. And I'm going to talk a little bit about them in a few moments, but I want to focus first on how you guys are using it. Karaf is providing for you guys a model for your development, how you're architecting your various applications, I call them features, and it handles all the life cycle and the management of those applications running in your controller. This, from my point of view, has made it a lot easier for brand new developers and brand new operators and systems engineers to be able to get onto the platform and be able to get productive quickly and understand how things are coming together and what applications come together to build out really amazing networks. So, what has this to do with the Karaf report? What I want to present to you is our main projects and all of our sub-projects, and present them in a way to say, this is where we're going, and if you have any questions about where we are in our various release cycles and how these projects can help OpenDaylight, please ask me, or we can talk about it in the hallway after the talk. One of the things that Karaf has been doing has been empowering a lot of development in various industries. We originated from SOA, that's service-oriented architectures, working mostly with Fortune 500s, doing business-style communication, so RESTful services, integration patterns, message-oriented middleware, that world. That's where we came from. When OpenDaylight came to us, we got into SDN, and we've been firmly helping out the community as best we can. Whenever there's a question or there's an issue, they will come to us, and we will work towards resolving those and getting a patch out to you as fast as we can. We're also in IoT. There's a really neat project called OpenHab that's based itself on top of Apache Karaf that's working towards making smart home automations, which is another neat area. So between our SOA leanings, SDN, and IoT projects, Karaf's at the center of empowering a whole different generation of networking and business value software. It's really neat stuff. For the container itself, you guys are currently on the Karaf 3.0 line. We just released 3.08 about a week ago. What we are hoping we're able to do with the community is migrate you towards the 4 line. That's where our stable development is happening. Currently, we're working on the 4.1.0 release, which is going to be our first one built purely on Java 8 with support for Java 9 runtime. So when you see us putting down a 7/8 for stable, that means we build it against Java 7, but we can test it against Java 8. For Java 4.1, for Karaf 4.1, we build it on Java 8, and then we test it against Java 9. A pure Java 9 build, I will not predict to come out until at least 4.2 or possibly 5.0. We're working towards seeing what's going to happen when Java 9 comes out and all the different libraries get updated to handle that. We know that Apache Maven's getting a couple of updates. There's JUnit updates happening to support the JVM. So we don't want to move too quickly. We want to make sure that all of those supporting projects have time to find out what's going on with Java 9 and then get our PAX exam and various other sub-projects to get their libraries updated before we bring it into the container. So for right now, a Java 8 build with 9 compatibility would be the future for Karaf 4.1x. And we're hoping to get that out around November timeframe, which should be plenty of time if Carbon wanted to move toward that. Now, our ecosystem of sub-projects. Who here is familiar with our sub-projects at Karaf or have heard from them? A couple of people? Excellent. So, anyone here have tried to do any clustering or spreading of your application configs amongst multiple ODL controllers? Have you started doing that yet? A couple of people in the back of the room. Using Akka, okay. In Karaf, we have a project called Cellar. Cellar uses Hazelcast underneath the hood to be able to distribute events of applications coming into our container, lifecycle events, configuration changes, and spreads it out to the network of Cellar-enabled Karafs. So what that would look like is that we install our Cellar feature into your running Karaf. So say if you're OpenDaylight, you would install into there, and then it will configure itself across a Hazelcast network to distribute these events and keep everybody in sync. If you're already doing something similar in ODL, I would suggest having a quick look at how we do it with Cellar, because we already are doing this. It's in production at other companies and SOA-style deployments. But because of that means it's been battle tested. We've had our JIRAs come back. We've fixed our bugs. We've done our bug fixes. This stuff is ready to go. The release schedule for this guy, we maintain 2 branches, and this is something I want to make sure people are really aware of, is that we have a 3.0 line and a 4.0 line. The 3.0 line follows Karaf 3. The 4.0 line follows Karaf 4. There's various changes in the OSGI support, the Java runtime support, different schemas. We separate those out into 2 project lines. Something that when OpenDaylight decides to go to a Karaf 4.0 based or 4.1 based container, they'll want to be able to distribute between what's on the older style Karaf and the newer style Karafs. So, who knows how a Cave can help OpenDaylight? Does anyone know the Cave project? Cave is Karaf's implementation of an OSGI repository. Basically, if you need to be able to set up a repo that will have all of your bundles and features, this will be able to act as a proxy. You can install all of your bundles there. And it also has the ability to add in additional metadata that can help Karaf be able to resolve capabilities and requirements for applications we're installing into the container. That little bit of extra metadata is really helpful because you don't have to do as much work trying to get your applications to run. Very similar to the Cellar project, we split it up between a 3.0 and a 4.0 project line, one that's for the Karaf 3, the other for Karaf 4. We have found this to be very, very stable. We do patch releases when required. What we've been finding is that even though it's in production, it's pretty much been running, rock steady, which is really great. Our next set of releases should happen this fall. Last year, I debuted this one to you, is Apache Karaf Decanter. Decanter is the monitoring system that's been built into a Karaf. It's a really neat system. It gives you a set of appenders and collectors that can take information out of your container and do a little bit of logic to it and be able to put it down to a nice back-end logging system. It allows you to graph out exactly where problems may be happening. So if you got a nice dashboard to say, here's your JVM stats or here's your packet stats, you can write up collectors and then add in additional logic to say, oh, we have too many threads or packet throughput has gone too low, send out an alert. It's a really neat system. I've seen some redistributors of OpenDaylight gone on to pick up Decanter and rebrand it for their own monitoring systems. Currently,
so you can add to it.
Yes. Yeah, very easily. It's set up a set of plugins. You can just implement appenders and collectors and alerters, and that's what people have been doing, and I can have a chat with you afterwards about what some companies have been using it for. But it's pretty cool stuff. The current series is on version 1. It works against all maintained versions of Karaf at this point. Our next version is coming out in another couple of weeks. We haven't decided if we're going to do any major changes to it to make a 2.0 development branch of it. Right now, we're just taking back feedback from our users and improving it, following Kibana and following our dashboards and trying to make it easier for people to develop and use. And finally, our newest sub-project that we've just brought into the Karaf project. One of the biggest things people have talked to me before about Karaf is that the ability to just give me a container, here's my app, I want to run it somewhere. So what we've developed is something called Karaf Boot. It's for simplifying your development. The whole process of this is that you're going to take Karaf Boot starters, which is basically like an archetype, saying, here's the basic Karaf I want with the minimum set of features and a couple of extra tools, so think some plugins, that taken along with your application will then output say a Karaf archive or a custom distribution with just your application, or finally a Docker image with your Docker files. So that way you can just say, here's my application, I want to take it, here's my Docker, throw it in a machine, get it running. Which is something I would like to see if OpenDaylight would want to use something like this. So you can take your ODL container, your application, your configs, put them together, fire out a Docker, and fire it up somewhere. It'd be pretty cool to do. That one is out now. Well, in the fall. We're going to get the full release. We're right now in snapshot, but it's moving very, very close. It should be out in the next few weeks. It's currently in development. It's for Karaf 4.x, currently that development line. We do not have it for supporting the Karaf 3 line. So those were the collected set of sub-projects and the main container in our roadmaps. And just a couple of the areas I thought that OpenDaylight should be aware of, that these are projects that we have that I think that you should be leveraging, or at least coming and taking a look and see how we managed to do it. So you guys can not have to spend so much time in the reads figuring out how to get this support type integration working and just reuse it and get further on to your actual jobs. So it's pretty cool stuff. So if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer anything.
So what's the major difference between Akka cluster and the Cellar?
So what would be the difference between an Akka style
Clustering support.
Clustering support versus, okay, so between Akka clustering and a Cellar. So the methodology we're using with Hazel class is that it is implementing a synchronization of events in the container. So for us, we're looking at installing applications. So you have 4 nodes and you install the MDSal feature. We would then install the MDSal feature in all 4 nodes in our cluster. If you uninstalled it, you would uninstall it from all 4 nodes in the cluster. If you were to update the configuration, it would then distribute that to all 4 nodes in our cluster. One of the other things we'll implement for us is something called distributed OSGI, DOSGI, which is something that allows you to distribute an OSGI app across multiple JVMs. An Akka style one for Akka clustering, you would need to have an Akka engine installed. It's not about doing distributed OSGI. It's not specifically about Karaf events, whereas the Cellar version is about OSGI events and the events happening within a Karaf container and replicating it across multiple Karaf containers. So Akka, you would have to implement all of those, whereas Cellar, we've built it to be, here's Karaf events, we know about things going on in Karaf, and we can replicate it across all of our nodes. So that would be our differences. Cool. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
As ODL controller scales,
Mm-hmm.
and your Karaf also scale.
Yes.
How many nodes? And can you ensure the synchronization at the same time making sure the performance is also scaling?
So the question that was asked was, how does Karaf scale? And then we want to talk about it scaling in the form of a cluster. So to answer the first question, at Karaf, we've been working on small systems to the large. One of the project I mentioned earlier, OpenHab, is all about doing things for IoT, and it's doing smart home controllers. Most of that's on devices no bigger than a Raspberry Pi. So a lot of the tickets we'll get back into Jira is about ARM support or Edison support or smaller CPU architectures that have very, very limited, like 1 gig or less of RAM or 512 megs less RAM, and no additional like disk or very, very slow networking capabilities. we've been working on Karaf to make sure it can scale down and fit nicely and run as a very thin container on top of an architecture such as that. And I think it was about 2 years ago, I was able to even get helium. Was it helium or hydrogen? One of those two, running on a Raspberry Pi. So we can get Karaf, the container itself, very slim down to run on very small gear. Running Karaf on very large machines, i.e. where you have many tens of gigs of RAM, is pretty much trivial. I mean, it's just install Java onto a big box, set your GC tunings for a very large heap, and off to the races you go. From the point of view of clustering, so since we're using Hazelcast under the hood for Cellar, we basically follow the same clustering issues and topology issues you would have with using a Hazelcast network. So if you're going to set up multiple nodes of those, it'd be the same issues that we follow there. So for the expansion for how big a cluster we'd get that I've actually played on, I've seen 8 and 9 nodes before using Cellar in a production environment, but I haven't actually seen people bring it out to the maximum of what a Hazelcast cluster can possibly get to. I've only seen what my clients have actually deployed. But yeah, it can be used, and you can get a reasonable scale from that point of view if you're just trying to get that one logical application distributed across multiple nodes that way. But since we already have it in Cellar, we have different demos, and there's documentation around it for Karaf 3 and Karaf 4. I'd encourage you to download Cellar, install it into your ODL container, and just start playing around, seeing what you can do for distributing your application load. You already have Karaf 3. You should be able to get Cellar immediately just to install as a feature, and just expand it out in a couple of JVMs and start playing around, see how different apps react to having that environment. You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, well then, if there's no other questions, I'd like to thank you guys again for having me come in to speak. If any of you have any questions on our roadmaps for Karaf or sub-projects, I'm more than happy to talk. I'm here for the next 2 days. I'd love to be able to hack around on some issues that OpenDaylight is having, or any additional features that you guys need from Karaf. I would highly encourage you guys to send any issues you see back to the Karaf user list. We love seeing pull requests. We love seeing patches, even bug reports. We like seeing those too. We're really here to help you guys. We really like seeing what you guys are doing. So thank you again, and I'll give you back the next couple of minutes before the next talk. Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to thank you all for having me here to the OpenDaylight Summit. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about Karaf and our roadmap and what our community is seeing as we go forward. I've been incredibly happy that OpenDaylight has moved their platform on top of Karaf for the last 2 years. It's been an amazing journey between our two communities. In this report, I'm going to talk about our roadmaps. Excuse the strain in my voice. Since every single presentation always has a slide with cats, these are my managers. They make sure that I'm coding every day. Last year, when I was talking to you guys, I said that I was going to put a little bit of effort into writing an update to the Learning Apache Karaf book. I started working toward that goal, and what ended up happening was that we wrote OpenDaylight Cookbook. This book is going to come out sometime around December. Our various sub-projects, and just talk about what's going on in those and how OpenDaylight can come to Apache Karaf and help us make these projects better. So a little bit about me really quick. I'm going to go through these slides real quickly. I'm a committer at Apache Karaf, Felix, and Service Mix. I'm one of the Karaf PMCs. I just got engaged. Awesome news for myself. I'm coming from Newfoundland, so I'm a little bit in a different time zone here, so a little bit jet lagged. So please remember this year. I wrote with several other OpenDaylight committers and contributors. We hope that you guys are able to use this book to be able to write various recipes for your networks, being able to get your controller up and running and doing projects that you want to do quickly and easily. It's currently available on the early access from PAC, and you can get it through Amazon as well. So if you want to download it as it exists right now, I think you have the first 9 chapters that you can read. And as you're reading it, you can send us back feedback, and we'll update it into the finalized book. All the code's on GitHub, so you can get our configs and any of the code that we write and try it out. It's really been a lot of fun. So let's get to the crux of my talk. I want to talk about how our communities are working together. You're the OpenDaylight community. You're working on a software-defined networking controller. I come from Apache Karaf. We're all about modular development